Welcome to Whiskey Talks. And so today we're privileged to have Tony Stucker, owner of PopaShot, the original PopaShot. So welcome, Tony.
Thank you, Andrew.
And Tony, how did you end up with PopaShot, this company that's been around forever? And how did you end up in Peoria, if you wouldn't mind sharing your story?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a bit of a long story, but my background was primarily in advertising. I started off in an ad agency in Chicago. Actually, then went and started a travel magazine. Ran that for a few years, so had the kind of the entrepreneurial bug there. After that closed, then worked in other online advertising, most out in Silicon Valley, a bunch of startups, most of which are no longer around. Was had a couple that did well, but it was about 5 years ago that I was working at a startup selling advertising, and just kind of saw the writing on the wall that this company probably wasn't going to work out. The online ad sales business had been changing, become much more programmatic and much more kind of machine learning, things like that, less personal. So I was looking to do something different and kind of was thinking something entrepreneurial again. Didn't have an idea for a business per se, but started looking for businesses for sale, looking online, going on some websites. For the most part, there were businesses in our area. I was living out in Northern California, restaurants, gas stations, things like that. And then one day I clicked on relocatable businesses on this website and was scrolling through, and up came PopaShot. And to be honest, I did not know PopaShot was a company at that point. I knew the name. To me, it was just kind of a generic term for arcade basketball games. I did not know there was a PopaShot. Quickly found out it was still owned by the founder, who had founded it about 35 years earlier at that time. He was in his 80s, Ken Cochran. He had created the game and everything like that. And his health wasn't real good, so he was looking to sell. Had been looking for a while. No one had kind of come forward, but as soon as I saw the opportunity, something about it, I knew this was it. It kind of screamed out. So got in touch with him. He was based in Kansas, Salina, Kansas, where the company had always been. Went and visited with him about a month later. And just like I said, kind of from the outset, knew that this was what I was meant to do. And hit it off with him. We had a great relationship. Took a couple months to kind of work out the details. And then officially bought the business July 1st of 2016. So almost 5 years ago.
Wow. And so did you ever think that you would actually be in the arcade or the entertainment, sort of the recreation / entertainment?
No. And there was kind of nothing about the business that would have necessarily screamed my background. I had to learn a lot about manufacturing, importing, logistics, working on Amazon sales, things like that. A lot of things I just had no experience in. And so, yeah, it was definitely a big learning curve. But I was excited about it. I was excited about the challenge because I just thought that there was a chance to kind of resuscitate this iconic brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you have had such an exciting, shall I say, career in advertising with some of the largest ad agencies. Did you ever, what was your educational journey like?
So I was a journalism major. So I grew up in Northern California, went to Northwestern, to their School of Journalism. At that point, like a lot of incoming college students, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Thought journalism sounded interesting. I think in hindsight, it was more what I liked about journalism, which I think has kind of suited me well, is I like to kind of learn about a lot of different things, kind of be able to dabble, not necessarily have to go real deep into something, but kind of know enough to kind of get by with a lot of things. And to me, that was kind of journalism was, in order to be a good reporter, you didn't necessarily need to know everything about a subject, but you had to know enough to ask some questions and things like that. So was a journalism major, but at that point too, this was the late 80s. Journalism was kind of transitioning. The School of Journalism at Northwestern was still very much focused on print journalism, newspapers. They hadn't really yet, they had some broadcast classes and stuff, and obviously this is all pre-internet. So I kind of quickly realized that I did not want to be a print journalist, did not want to go to work at a small newspaper. After graduation, then took a job with Leo Burnett Advertising, which at that point was the largest single ad agency in the U.S. They had one office in downtown Chicago, which was a great experience. Starting off, I worked in the media department there, so basically buying and placing ads, deciding where the ads should go, and then actually negotiating. So it was a great experience, and dealt with multi-million-dollar budgets right off the bat. And I was in. It was a great. They hired a lot of recent college grads, so it was almost like in some ways almost like a grad school. You had all these people from all over the Midwest primarily who had just graduated as well, and you were all kind of working together. So it was a great time. So I have a lot of good friends from those times.
So you had this exciting career in advertising, buying ads and placing ads, and so at what point did that end up? Did you end up thinking about, hey, maybe there's more to what I want to achieve in life?
Sure. So after being in Chicago for 4 years at the ad agency, it was kind of getting to that point where a lot of friends, at that point were settling down, getting married, maybe moving away, going to grad school, all sorts of things. And there was kind of nothing at that point that was kind of drawing my attention. I wasn't in a serious relationship. I didn't have any grad school, so started talking to the office there about perhaps taking an international assignment because again they just had the one U.S. office, but they had about 60 worldwide, and just kind of put my hat in the ring. Said, yeah, if something comes up, let me know. And eventually they had an opportunity. They needed someone to go to Egypt. So I had never been to the Middle East. Didn't really know anything about it other than you. There was no Americans in the office or anything. They just had a small, about 20-person office, but they had won the Procter & Gamble business, and they needed someone to go and kind of set up their media operation there. So at that point, I think I was 26, figured, give it a shot. So I did, had a fantastic experience, was there for a year and a half, lived in Cairo. And it was while I was there, I started writing letters back, kind of open letters, because, in the month or two before I went there, everyone kind of knew I was going. They're like, oh, keep in touch. And again, this is pre-internet. If it would happen today, I'd probably just do a blog or Facebook post or whatever. But back then, there wasn't that. So I would write these multi-page column letters and fax them back, and then friends would distribute them. And again, it was mostly just kind of my impressions, kind of what I was experiencing, what it was like to live in Egypt. And as I was doing this, I kind of thought, there seems to be a desire. People were really kind of interested in this, and there was really no travel magazine that kind of talked to this audience in this way. So started researching, decided to start a travel magazine. So that was kind of the impetus, kind of the first entrepreneurial thing. So eventually moved back to the U.S., moved back to California, and started publishing a travel magazine called Trips. First issue was in fall of '97. We did that for about 4 years and did pretty well. We had about 100,000 circulation, national advertisers. We were in bookstores and all that. And then 9/11 happened, and the travel market kind of disappeared, and so we shut that down. So, but that definitely gave me a taste of, I think, being my own boss. Kind of making those types of decisions and that type of thing.
And so let's kind of rewind back to your childhood.
Okay.
Was Trips the first sort of business you started, or did you have
I mean, in terms of starting something, yeah. I mean, before that, I'd always kind of done, odds and end jobs, delivering newspapers, umpiring Little League, watering for, neighbors or watching their pets and things like that. But this was kind of my first kind of, entrepreneurial job. My father was a surgeon, he was a doctor, and so he wasn't a quote businessman, so I didn't really have kind of that that kind of that background. But I was always kind of, I think, interested in doing things, and from a young age, making money. But I think Trips was kind of the first kind of idea I had that actually certainly carried through with. Before then, you might have ideas like a lot of people do, but for whatever reason you don't do them. But Trips was the first one actually like, yep, we're gonna do this.
And so with you mentioned that you went to Cairo, Egypt, and a lot of people say travel changes you. Do you agree with that statement?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it was a phenomenal experience. At that point in my life, like I said, I was about 26. I was there for a year and a half. I was single. I didn't have to really kind of worry about anyone else or anything like that. It was also great, and I think what I look back at too is interesting is I was fortunate to go when I did. I think again pre-internet, the internet was just starting off. It was kind of like when I first went to Egypt, kind of heard some rumblings. By the time I got back, like a year and a half later, it was you saw URLs on all the ads. It was kind of like that timing, but it was good because I was, I won't say disconnected, but if I had the internet, if I'd done this today, it would have been very, very easy to just kind of keep living my U.S. life, watching the same programs and Netflix and all that stuff, and communicating Facebook and social media. Obviously still living there, but still having a definite foot in the U.S. As it was, I could call people, like I said, I could fax people, but that was about it. I mean, it was pretty much not on my own, but I was really had to kind of live there, which I think made it much more interesting, much better. And yeah, definitely, I think it definitely changes people. I think it. You kind of see the world, you see how other people are living, and you come back and things perhaps you took for granted you don't anymore. I tried to explore some when I was there. I traveled throughout Egypt, went to Dubai, went to around some Mediterranean countries. Just again, try to kind of experience it. And so and that's one of the reasons kind of led us to start the travel magazine Trips, because travel did have a big impact on me.
So was there a specific aha moment when you were in Cairo, or?
For in terms of having the idea for Trips, or not really. I think it was just as I started writing these letters, and before I had gone to Egypt, I'd worked on Sony Electronics was the client I was working on, and I was working on the camcorders, and so they did a lot of advertising in travel publications and things like that. So I was pretty familiar with the travel publications from an advertiser standpoint, and then, like I said, I started to kind of view this from a reader standpoint. That's kind of, I don't know if there was an aha moment, but it was kind of sort of thinking like, okay, maybe there could be something here. And I'd been interested back then in kind of small magazines, zines as they were called, kind of the non kind of mainstream things. And so it just kind of progressed from that. I thought, this is maybe something we could do.
And so obviously, then the 9/11 happened, and just the travel industry was in a slump. What happened after that?
We basically, at that point, we'd gotten to the point where we'd gone kind of as far as we could. We hadn't really raised investor money. We kind of bootstrapped it. Had been doing it for a few years, and kind of got to the point where it was either okay, we got to expand. We got to because back then especially you needed to get circulation, which meant spending money to get on direct mail and things like that. And we'd reached out. We'd talked to some publications, including like Outside Magazine, and perhaps doing something with them, and then. The market kind of dried up then, and at that point, like I said, we knew we just couldn't kind of keep the path we had been running, so hard, so long that either we needed to kind of grow or shut down, and so we just shut down.
Okay, and so I guess I want to explore a little bit the emotional side of this whole startup roller coaster that a lot of people don't talk about, right? Because it impacts your life emotionally. Can you share more about what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, it was an emotional experience. I mean, for 4 or 5 years, I guess, it had been kind of almost all consuming. It was, especially in the magazine world, basically we were bi-monthly. And so your life kind of goes in these like 8-9 week cycles, where you have to, publish and things. And so one of the ironic things was we didn't really do much traveling during the time other than business travel. I had to go to a lot on business trips, but, people assumed that we were, jetting off on these, and there just wasn't time in there. And so I think when we kind of finally made the decision that, okay, this is just, we're not going to be able to find a partner, we're not going to be able to sustain it. There was definitely, on the one hand, a sense of relief, because like I said, we've been kind of running on this wheel, for so many, for several years. And so it's kind of like, okay, we can now get off the wheel. But it was also, like any job, it's your identity. Seemingly all of our friends and family were subscribers, and so they knew what we were doing, and they would comment on it. So, in addition to just kind of in regular life, they'd also talk about this thing you were producing, ask questions and things like that. And so when that ended, it was kind of like you had to explain that, yes, you were shut down, and they weren't having it anymore and stuff. So, it was kind of emotional. It was kind of a letdown. Like I said, on the one hand, it was a relief that we're off the hamster wheel. On the other hand, there was sadness. It's like, okay, this hasn't worked. I mean, we did it for several years. So I don't think I would call it a failure, but we did shut it down, and so it ceased. So there was disappointment.
and we learn from the experiences, just like you had this idea of sharing your thoughts from a faraway country. Of course, at that time the world was a lot larger place.
Yes.
Now it's a phone call away or a video call away. And so it's changed, right? The world around us has changed, and I'll just fast forward a little bit. So eventually you had continued your career in advertising, and then you joined this company called Slideshare. How did that happen?
So I worked after we shut down the magazine. I'd work in some different advertising positions, and living basically in Silicon Valley, lots of startups, and I wasn't so much chasing the riches or something. Some people would say, oh, you're trying to find the next something. I was just in hindsight, I realized that I was really looking for opportunities that were very entrepreneurial. I was going to be kind of starting or leading something within this company. I worked for probably 6, 7, 8 sales positions between shutting down trips and before PopaShot. And kind of the one thing they all had in common was that they were, I was leading, or I was kind of the first person there in the advertising department, things like that. So it was very kind of entrepreneurial. I never had just kind of a fixed role or things like that. So Slideshare was a guy who had been working at another company, interviewed at Slideshare. At the time, they were still pretty new. They had, I think it was the 5th employee in their U.S. San Francisco office, and the first one really revenue generating. So, and they were, we used to call it, they were a PowerPoint, YouTube for PowerPoint, basically. It was, much like YouTube for videos, this was PowerPoint presentations, and became, very popular and very successful. And so I was basically led the monetization efforts, bringing money in, and was there and for 2 years and did well, I think, enjoyed it. And then LinkedIn acquired the company. And so moved over to LinkedIn, which is a great company, but it also was very, very different from what I was used to. When you're coming from, I still recall my first meeting at LinkedIn. I was in a conference room with about 30 people, and which was double what our entire company was when Slideshare was acquired, and because we had grown to like 15 people. So it felt like LinkedIn felt like a big company. And someone who was kind of a head of North America sales came and asked me and said, "Does this feel like a big company?" I said, "Yeah, it does." And they had been at LinkedIn since the beginning, and they were trying to kind of keep it a small company feel. But by that point, it was thousands of employees, and even within the San Francisco office was several hundred. And so again, it was just a bit of a culture shock from what I was accustomed to. I was very accustomed to kind of hands-on, no bureaucracy, no layers and things like that. Now you go to a place where there's multiple layers and titles that you're not really sure what they do and things. So like I said, it was a great company. I think a fantastic place to work, particularly if you were younger and right out of school, the experience and all that. But after a couple of years there, I was kind of ready to move on, just because I felt kind of stagnating.
And so I want to pause for a second here on the whole process, because a lot there are so many startup founders, right? And we're all struggling to get to the stage of maybe we'll exit at some point, but we never really planned for that exit. Can you share, when you first heard the news that Slideshare was going to be acquired, how were you feeling about that?
There have been some rumors. So that, again, the company was still really small. Like I said, there were about maybe 13, 14 employees in the San Francisco office, including the 2 founders. They were a couple, and like I said, they had hired me. I knew them well. And there had always been kind of rumors or thoughts that there'd be some type of part. LinkedIn made sense as a partner because LinkedIn was looking for content, Slideshare content. They're both business sites. So I think there was always kind of talk or thinking that there was some type of relationship, more formal relationship. And we kind of knew that there had been discussions, nothing official. But it still was kind of shocked when they said, yes, LinkedIn's acquiring us. And, it was kind of the excitement of, how much money am I going to get? To also, what's this mean for my job? They said everyone's going to move over there. Well, most of the company still at that point was engineers and stuff. And so they needed them to keep working. I was one of only a couple of people who were more kind of the sales side. And we were kind of like, okay, this is going to be different, because LinkedIn really did buy it for the content, not so much for what we were doing. So so it was a mix of emotions. It was excitement. It was, not fear, but concern. Like, what does it, even though they said they were going to bring us on and all that, immediately met the LinkedIn people and they're great. Like I said, I was just a little thrown by just kind of the size, because other than my first company that I worked at, Leo Burnett, I'd always worked at small companies, and to kind of, like I said, go to something this size, it was a bit disorienting, I guess. Made the transition, and I don't think I ever really knew what to do with me and a couple other the revenue people. Like I said, it was a great company for a couple of years, and then I felt it was time to get back to kind of the startup world.
Yeah, and so navigating large companies has always been an issue. Like, how? So I guess from your perspective, going from a small company to a large company, can you share a little bit about how you managed to kind of feel your way around, learn the ropes, and navigate that kind of environment?
Yeah, I mean, at LinkedIn, I'm not sure I ever did a very good job of it. They kind of initially wanted to put me in just a sales role within a group. That just didn't really interest me. I was interested in continuing to do stuff with Slideshare. And so, I had to work with a number of people and talk to potential bosses and things like that, and kind of almost try to carve out my role and in some ways almost sell myself within LinkedIn. Because again, they really acquired the company for the content and the engineering and stuff. I kind of was a throw-in. So on the one hand, there weren't high expectations. It wasn't like I got there on day one and they were expecting me to produce something. So that was nice. I didn't have to prove myself on day one. On the other hand, I kept trying to say, hey, I've got an idea. We can do this and do this, and it just kind of fell through the cracks. So it was frustrating at times. I felt I look back at that period and I feel like in the couple of years I was there, I'm not sure I really accomplished anything. Made some good friends, enjoyed the company, all that. But I think I was compensated more than I produced. That's for sure. But like I said, because I always kind of felt like I was trying to kind of search for some meaning there, and that was the thing. On the one hand, like I said, in a small company, you couldn't do that. A small company, it's like, it's pretty, it's readily apparent whether or not you're producing, whatever your role is. You're not really necessary. A company of LinkedIn size at that point, you could kind of skate for a while, kind of not hide, but you could kind of get by without producing, because there are multiple myriad levels and offices, and depending who's reporting to who. So on the one hand, it was kind of nice, but then I also realized, like, I just don't want to just not do anything. I feel like I need to get back and actually do something.
Yeah, and really it boils down to purpose. Mm-hmm. Why am I here, and mm-hmm. what am I contributing to mm-hmm. the organization that I work for? Right.
And it was nice after a while, because Slideshare, not quite as extreme as Trips and starting the publication, but again, small company. I was really, for the most of the time, I was the only revenue producer. They had venture funding, so it wasn't like they were going to go out of business without me, but it was important that I bring in revenue. And again, in a small company where I was basically the only one, it was very apparent, if I was doing my job or not. And so after doing that for a couple of years, it was kind of nice to have that relief, like, okay, the big guy's taking care of us, and I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, and so it's, the sigh of relief, breather, mm-hmm. and then you begin broadening your horizons. Mm-hmm. And you really broaden your horizons with your next role at Anchor Free. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of companies in there, some small startups even before Anchor Free, a news aggregator site, another called LiveJournal, which was kind of an early blogging site. So in various things, these were startups or kind of restartups, and Anchor Free was kind of the same thing. It was a VPN, it was a security site. And they were hoping to do more with international advertising. And I got there and about a month after I started, they had some layoffs, and I was kind of surprised I wasn't let go, because usually, the last one in is one of the first ones to go. So that was kind of right off the bat. It was like, okay, this is, they've got some issues. And then some of the things they had said about kind of what they were hoping to do didn't really come to fruition. So that was kind of, like I said, at that point, because it was kind of my third role after the Slideshare LinkedIn thing, and I was just getting a little frustrated with the kind of the whole online ad world and startups, and again I kept putting myself in positions where, again, I was like the first person, the only person doing this. So I was, kind of not setting myself up for failure, but I was putting myself in positions that were kind of precarious, just because I wanted, I think, that kind of entrepreneurial feel. I did not want to just go in and take over a territory and, that someone else had been doing. I wasn't looking for that kind of role. I wanted, like I said, to kind of do something new and different and be the first. But that also meant that things wouldn't work out because, a lot of times they wouldn't, what they thought would happen didn't happen, what have you. So it was kind of at the end of that when I said, to myself, well, I'm kind of trying to take these entrepreneurial type roles. They're not working out. Maybe it's time to just actually be an entrepreneur, not worry about working for someone else, just actually work for myself and start something.
That is really fascinating. And so, so you obviously, after you left LinkedIn, you were on this journey and you were pushing for that frontierland.
Yeah.
And can you share, how were you approaching this process? Was that a process, or were you like, oh, I'm going to meet people?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was more, again, looking to get back to doing something, like I said, entrepreneurial without being, quote, an entrepreneur. I wasn't looking to start my own business, but I was looking for, again, something like Slideshare been or some other companies I'd been at where they were more startups, new. They want someone to kind of come in and start running a sales operation. Not a big company, a smaller company. So yeah, there's no shortage of those in Silicon Valley, in San Francisco, and various times, they pop up or, they think they need someone, so it was, it could be frustrating because again, you might talk to someone in months, but the Anchor Free, I think I'd start talking to them maybe a year or so before I took the job because they weren't sure what their needs were going to be. So again, I think I had an idea kind of what I wanted to do. What company or what exact title or position was unclear.
Okay. And so, I mean, you were in California. PopaShot is in Kansas. How did that come about?
Yeah, as I said, I literally, being at Anchor Free, I kind of saw the writing on the wall that, my position probably wasn't going to be there for long term. And so I started literally just, going on websites, and there was one in particular called bizbuysell.com. And you could go in there and put in like your county and stuff and all these companies, for sale. And like I said, it would, liquor stores and restaurants and gas stations and dry cleaners, things like that. And nothing wrong with any of those. I just didn't have any experience or anything like that. And then, as I said, one day there was a button to click for relocatable businesses. I thought, well, I work in online sales. Perhaps that's something. And like I said, I just started scrolling through, and up came PopaShot. And like I said, I could not. I won't pretend that I thought we would be where we would be now after 5 years. I didn't have a grand plan right off the bat, but something kind of immediately. It was like, this is it. I just kind of knew it. And I tell people I was fortunate that sales had been very kind of minimal for almost a decade. They hadn't really been doing any marketing, any new branding, any new product development. So, and initially the owner had been trying to sell for over a year, had a higher price. Anyone who just looked at the numbers, if you just look at the numbers, you say it makes no sense because the revenue and what they're asking. But I looked at it and said, okay, now I'm not going to just try to do what they've been doing. I think there's potential here to do a lot of other things. And so, and I think, the owner, I think he really wanted someone to kind of carry on the legacy of PopaShot. He didn't want to just sell the name because, it would have been easy for a company, a big company that makes, basketball games, come in and just buy PopaShot, shut down everything, just take the name and start slapping on their products. That would have been pretty easy to do and for him to do, but he wanted like I said, the PopaShot legacy to kind of continue. And I think he saw that that's what I wanted to do as well.
So it sounded like there was an alignment, right? You wanted to take something, that had not yet realized its full potential. And on the other hand, with the founder of PopaShot, he was hoping and looking for the right person to come along that wanted to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just to clarify, I think PopaShot, back in the 80s and 90s when it first started, it realized potential. It was the game. There were national championships. It was very big. As competitors came in and kind of crowded out the market, he kind of went down. And in fairness to the founder, to Ken Cochran, he didn't come from a business background. He had been a basketball coach at colleges and that. So he kind of had the game. And then the world had changed. By the time I bought it, they had a presence on Amazon, but it was minimal. They had a presence online, but it was very minimal. So the world had changed a lot, since the early 80s when he founded the company to, 35 years later in the way you sold, the way you approached customers, all sorts of things. So, and again, he was in his 80s, his health wasn't great. So it wasn't that he, couldn't or didn't want to. It was just, I think he was ready for someone else. And like you said, I think he saw me as being able to kind of carry the torch from him.
And that's really a great sort of alignment, because it's continuing on the legacy, right? Standing on the shoulders of those who have come before us.
Right. And that's, I'm sorry, it's interesting you say that, because we have, I won't talk too much about when we moved here yet, but when we did move here, we hired people. I just was, kind of my introductory kind of talk to everyone. I said, I'm not going to, have a whole list of like 20 items. Some companies will have their whole credo and all these things. And for me, those that's fine, but you don't really remember them. But I kind of gave them 3 things to remember, one of which was cherish the brand. And by that I meant that PopaShot, it predated me. I did not invent it. I've come relatively recently to it. I hope that whatever happens, to me long term, PopaShot, goes beyond me. PopaShot's been great. It's allowed me to do and meet a lot of interesting people and go places, see things. So I think it's really important to kind of remember, like I said, stand on the shoulders that, there were people before. It'd be one thing maybe if I had, invented this myself, but I didn't. And so I feel like we're kind of, just kind of protecting the legacy now, because we have so many people come to us and say, oh, I grew up playing, or, and now my son is, or grandson, or whatever. And so again, like I said, it's humbling to know that this came before and that we're kind of, in charge of it now.
Absolutely right. So, stewarding the legacy, and what a privilege it is. And so let's get into the part that you were alluding to, which is Kansas City. Oh, sorry, not Kansas City, Salinas, Kansas.
Salina, Kansas, yeah. Right in the middle of the state, yeah.
Right, and then Peoria. How did that come about?
Sure. So when we bought the company, initially I thought, well, we were living in California. I thought we'd move the company to California. I knew prices or real estate rates would be different. I looked at a warehouse near where we live, and it literally was about 20 times more expensive than the same warehouse we had in Kansas. So I kind of ran the numbers and said, if we keep the business in Kansas, and at that point they really only had like 3 part-time employees. There wasn't a big staff, but they had an inexpensive facility in that. And I said, I can afford to go back basically as often as I want, and just keep the operation there for now instead of moving it, because California, the real estate, the labor costs, plus for shipping purposes, it just makes sense to be somewhere more centrally located. So we kept it in Kansas, and I think that was one of the better decisions I made, because it allowed me then to really kind of concentrate on building the brand, the marketing, new product development, things like that, while they kind of maintain the company as it was. And so after a couple of years of doing that, of going back once a month, and we're looking to hire and add some new people, and we were just having difficulty. Salina is a town of about 40,000, kind of right in the middle of the state. And even just hiring like customer service people and things like that, we were having difficulty finding people. And knowing where I wanted the company to go, I thought, okay, we're just not going to be able to find the people we want here. And I knew we could get some remote, but I really wanted to have a place where we kind of could find people. And my wife is originally from Peoria. Her father's still here. Her sister, brother-in-law, some of their kids. We got married here. I've been coming here for 20 some years, and so. At one point, a few years ago, I thought, let's take a look at Peoria. Again, I'm familiar with it. We have family, friends there. And I read about, like I said, this was a few years ago, the warehouse district kind of coming back and something's going on. So on a trip here, I just kind of went, check out some warehouses in the area. I'd never really been down to this area. Fell in love with warehouses around here. They remind me a lot of my time living in Chicago, because you don't get these good kind of old brick warehouses like you do in California. They're here. So I just kind of started focusing on that. And about a year after I started looking, found this facility, which was kind of, before we had looked at places that were a little too big, a little too small. This is kind of the just right one. It was this building was basically empty, hadn't been used in years. The roof was rotting, the floor was rotting, but thought this is something we could do. And so just started working with everyone from the city to economic development to downtown, things like that, and just started getting in place and started having a vision that, I think this makes sense. I think this is where our home can be. I'm comfortable coming back here again. Got family, friends. It all kind of fell into place.
Okay, and so of course we've been through the global pandemic. What was 2020 like for you?
So it was interesting. We started the year. We finished the renovation of our office here in January of 2020. We had a kind of an open house. We didn't have any employees or anything here yet, but it was kind of we're done with construction. We're coming to Peoria, kind of announced. So we started looking to hire people the first couple months. I was here basically a year ago today in town doing some interviews for our first positions, as well as we had given games to the Park District to use at the high school basketball championship. So I was excited to see that, the whole fan fest and things like that. And then obviously, each day it kind of got scaled back, though it went away. At first, I honestly wasn't sure what it would do to our business. Usually March Madness is a big part of our business. In hindsight, we got extremely lucky in that we had sold a lot of games to companies that were doing March Madness promotions. We had sold PopaShot game to every Nissan dealership in the country because they were going to start doing promotions. We sold a bunch of custom games to TikTok. They were going to do big promotions. Some other companies. We had sold all those. Those all been paid for and stuff. And then obviously that ended up not happening. And basically once the shutdown started in mid-March, our sales took off. We kind of realized that for the most part, our games, they go to families with kids at home. That's kind of our core audience. And just about anything that keeps the kids at home, and whether it's extreme weather or in this case a pandemic, was good for our business. So April last year was our best non-holiday month ever. We really tend to skew to the Thanksgiving to Christmas. That's our huge period. But April was fantastic. May was good. So we were through the first 2/3, 3/4 of last year, we were more than double the year before. So really, really grew dramatically. Fourth quarter holiday period and usually our busy time, we did well, but there were just a whole host of logistics issues. So we did not do as well as we had hoped. But still for the year, we ended up, like I said, very good, very well. And certainly compared to a lot of businesses that, had a really rough time, we did very well. So no complaints. And,
you alluded to this earlier. The product was actually manufactured in China, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, with the global pandemic, then we begin to see supply chain issues. What was that like?
So we lucked out when the pandemic first struck. Our factory in China, had been shut down for the Chinese New Year. They only shut down for like 2 more weeks after that, then they opened back up. And we still had enough supply left over from the previous holiday period that we were able to make it through. We did not run out of product. So we were fine kind of throughout the entire year. When we got to the holiday period, just logistics, everything from literally, I tell people, people are like, what do you mean logistics? What part? I said, literally from the time the game left the factory till it got to the customer, there were issues every step of the way. Ships that, normally in the past you could be pretty reliable that, it would leave on this day, arrive on this day. They were taking an extra week, 2 weeks. still things are backed up in Port of LA and Long Beach. Ships are just sitting there for like a week or 2 to unload. We had containers. One container was supposed to go. We were supposed to have 2 containers in particular go from LA to Chicago, go on rail around November. One did fine, like it was supposed to. The other got buried under other containers. Took 6 weeks to get there. There was just a whole host of things. Shipments got lost. Warehouses got overwhelmed. It just, Amazon had issues. We use most of our games are shipped either from Amazon or we have a third-party logistics company that we use. And I think it was like the day or 2 days after Black Friday, we had like 1,000 games we needed to ship. And the guy from the logistics company called and said FedEx had just said they were refusing any more shipments for them. So here we have like 1,000 orders go out this day, 1,000 orders the next day. And he said basically FedEx is capping it. We don't know what we're going to do. It's like, okay, this never happened to them. There was no warning. So just things like that. Each day it would just seem to be another, kind of nightmare issue that, and it was kind of a ripple effect. Okay, if this happens, then we have to do this and move this here, and so it was the Thanksgiving to Christmas was probably the longest month of my, certainly my PopaShot career. Like I said, we ended up fine, but it was very stressful. And the good news, I don't know if it's good news, we have excess inventory because sales weren't what we'd hoped. Logistics continue to be a big problem. Factories are now, there's the currency exchange rate isn't good, so it's kind of a good time to have inventory here because again, these problems have persisted.
And so a lot of founders as well as business owners always have encounter these unexpected issues. Mm-hmm. Can you share more, perhaps some insights and advice for them? How did you approach it, and how did you make it work for you in the end?
Yeah, I think I would just say the ability. I think I've kind of realized a few things. One, for the most part, I don't get too stressed. My wife, who's also works in the business with me, a lot of times I won't even tell her some of the things because I know she'll get very stressed. So I think I just kind of, and I don't know how much of that my personality, my background, but basically, don't worry too much. Keep the big picture in mind. So that, and just being able to adapt. Say, okay, I understand FedEx is not picking up shipments here. What does you work on this? I'll go work on this. Just try to kind of come up with solutions. Just adapt, not be so rigid that it's like, well, there's nothing we can do. Kind of recognize what needs to get done. Sometimes you think, okay, I really want these to be shipped today. They can wait another day. Okay, so you deal with that. So kind of look at where the key things are that you have to get done. The things that you can adapt or move around, do that, and just kind of keep, like I said, as much as possible, not be stressed. Like I said, it's easy, and I said this was a stressful period, and it was. I think for the most part, I kind of kept it together. I guess it was just kind of frustrating at times, and like I said, it was constantly battling issues. But I think just trying to kind of keep a level head, because I think if you get too stressed out, you kind of lose focus, and it's easy just to kind of give up or take it out on people. So again, I think for the most part, just kind of say, okay, what's the goal here? What do we need to do to get there? And
do you think that your significant experience in the ad industry, ad buying, ad placement, a lot of ambiguity, do you think that has contributed to your ability to deal and be resilient with that process?
Yeah, I think just overall, I think one thing I've discovered, or one thing I think is between my different jobs I've had, different degrees, a journalism degree. I went back and got a master MBA at night at Santa Clara University. Some people ask me, it's like, well, does the MBA help out in your job? Does this? I think at this point, when I bought PopaShot, I was 47, I guess. I think at that point, you're kind of the sum of your parts. It's kind of hard to pinpoint and say, oh, this is why that. I think, having lived in Egypt, having lived abroad, and just kind of, see the rest of the world again, kind of broadens your scope. Having run a magazine before, I think all these things kind of contribute to kind of who you are. Like I said, it's a little tough to maybe pinpoint. It's like, aha, that's why I'm doing this. But I think it all kind of comes together, kind of, like I said, to who you are today.
And so thank you for sharing that. So where is PopaShot headed to?
Sure. So I think we're really excited. So I view our move to Peoria last year as kind of a step into, under our ownership, kind of PopaShot 2.0. We're kind of growing up. Just real quickly, our numbers, just to give you a sense of how much we've changed. When I bought the company, they were only selling some like premium games to like businesses and trade shows. So they were only selling about 300 games a year. So that's kind of what they were set up for. So they had a couple of part-time employees, warehouse, and stuff like that. Last year, we went from selling 300 games to about 60,000 games. So because we started making them in China and selling them. So it's a completely different company. I mean, revenue has grown exponentially. So it just, we're still a very small company, but much different. So I kind of view the move to Peoria as a chance to kind of reset, hire people in different roles, set up new systems, new ways of doing things. Just because, again, when I bought it, a lot of things we've been doing based on that. And again, we were moved to this point. So I think that's kind of the first thing. It's just kind of, like I said, becoming more of a, I don't say, grown-up company. I think the other thing in terms of the product and stuff, I think there's tremendous opportunity. A number of things. One, when we moved here, we started doing, we brought graphics in-house. So we have a printer, laminator, all that downstairs. So we can do, before we had outsourced that, but now we can do any type of customization clients want. We also have licenses with about 24 colleges, and we just recently started an agreement with the NBA. So we can do officially licensed NBA and NCAA games. We do that here. I think there's more growth there. We've got some other licenses we're working on. We've got some new products coming out, still in the basketball arena, but different sizes and things like that. I think kind of the biggest areas, though, going forward that I see are kind of twofold. One is international. Right now, other than Canada, our international sales are a fraction of 1% of our overall sales. That's for a couple of reasons. The primary ones are that our main games are fairly large. And so it's great when you have a basement, like in this part of the country or the East or whatever, and you can put it in your basement. It's not a problem. Most of the world don't live in houses our size here. They don't have big basements and things. So there's a problem of the size within the footprint of the game itself. And then there's the problem of shipping. It's not that expensive to ship our game within the U.S., UPS, FedEx, Ground, what have you. Ship internationally or even within other countries is a lot more expensive with our current game. So that being said, I think there's definitely a market there, and we do sell one-offs. But I think to really have a big impact in the international market, we'll need to redevelop our game, have probably a smaller footprint in the house, be able to be shipped more affordably. So I think that's down the road, not too far down the road. We'll be working on that. And then the other thing is just technology. We're working a lot on improving the technology, the gameplay, the game itself. We make a game in the frame and the backboard, things like that. Ours are pretty similar to others. There's only so many things you can do. There's 2 rims and things like that. Where I think there's where you can really stand apart, where we've already been doing this, but we're doing it more, is with the actual gameplay, when you're actually playing the game. And so everything from proprietary games to sound effects, announcers. What we're hoping to do is incorporate an app that then people could share their scores. They could play virtually against people. You could have virtual tournaments. So you could be here playing in Peoria in a PopaShot. I could be in California. We could, whether with video cameras, what have you, you could play virtually in real time. Or again, I could challenge you, you score. You could do tournaments, you could do family things. So really taking the game from being, just kind of its own little entity and connecting it to the world. I think there's a lot of opportunity with that.
I really, really like that. The sort of parallel that comes to mind is the integration where pinball machines were, right? There was this whole idea of the mechanical components or the physical components, but now suddenly you begin to leverage the lever of technology that can just completely transform the entire game experience.
Right. So, like I said, I think at the end of the day, the game's kind of the same. You're shooting a basket into a hoop, and you can change the ball, you can change some of the dimensions, but that's basically the same. But then what you can do with it in terms of competitions and tracking, and I think people are the whole gamification. People love seeing their stats, and not just the high score, but average score and how many shots they took and things like that, where they can kind of compare and do things like that. So I think that just what this could allow us to do, I think could be very interesting.
And I'm curious, does PopaShot right now have a leaderboard of some sort?
We don't have any type of official one, no. And so that's something too, I think with technology, with social media, redoing our website, we'll hopefully be able to build more of a community too. Because people will come to us and they'll say, oh, my 8-year-old got this score, or I just got this score, and they want to know, how does that compare? Well, we don't really have a mechanism to do that, but I think with this we could. Again, we can create kind of leaderboards, or people can kind of define it however they want and look at how other players do it, perhaps even compete. Perhaps even have tournaments where maybe you even have, like in golf, a handicap. So just because if you're better than I am, but you're giving me so many points, we can still compete against each other and see how we do. So I think there's things like that. And then out of home is a whole area too. We were very fortunate when COVID hit that really our business is 99%, in home. So again, that's where people were. We weren't really doing much at all out of home. We weren't making any coin-operated games. Those industries have been really devastated just because bars and restaurants and arcades, everything shut down. A lot have closed permanently. So that market's really, really been impacted heavily. But I think hopefully it will come back, and that could be an opportunity for us now to start getting our games into those markets as well.
Very exciting, Tony. And Peoria, as you know, is up and coming and growing, and Peoria has also historically been a place of experimentation and piloting new things, and so we're so glad to have you here and to innovate and grow together. Yeah. What would you say to other aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking to start out?
It's interesting. I've thought a lot about this in recent years, and in particular, about the same time I was buying PopaShot, I had a good friend of mine who had been in sales positions, bought a franchise and started a new franchise restaurant in the Bay Area, San Francisco, and it didn't work out for him. But I think also I kind of just saw that again, there's nothing wrong with being one or the other, but just kind of the mentality I felt was different. I think he was much more suited for, kind of a quote regular job, whatever you want to say, as opposed to entrepreneurial. I think you have to kind of know yourself, and I don't know if there's any magic. I'm sure there's things online and books and tests and things you can take, but to me, it really comes down to if you're an entrepreneur, I think that's really, that's why I think I was kind of unhappy in some of my previous roles because I just wasn't able to do that. I think if you're an entrepreneur, you kind of have to follow that. If you're not, it doesn't necessarily end well because again, for that entrepreneur, I think it's just that you dedicate, you're going to make this thing work and you devote yourself just time and energy. And again, not to say that people who work for other companies don't do these things, but at the end of the day, it's on you. There's no one else, to back you up. You have to be that person. Even as you hire other people, no one's going to care about your company more than you do. And so you can hire the best people and things like that, and that's great, and that's obviously helpful. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's your company, it's you, and you have to, whatever it means, you have to, there's no one there who's going to care as much. Whereas if you're working for a larger company or it's part of a company, yeah, you care. I'm sure you care about the position, you care about the company, but it's not the same as it's when it's your own. So I think it's like I said, I don't know if there's any easy task or question to ask or whatever, but I think it really is, as much as possible, find out if you are quote entrepreneur, and if so, I think you almost have to do that to really be happy. And if you're not, it's hard to kind of become that because it just if that's not your mentality, I think you just kind of again, I'm not saying one's better than the other. It's just kind of a realization of kind of who you are.
And so in your case, was this sort of like a side hustle till it became a full time, or
for PopaShot?
Yeah,
no, it was full. So we bought there was a little crossover. I left. Well, I was in negotiations to buy PopaShot. I hadn't officially bought it yet, but I knew we were going to. About a month before I officially bought it, I left the other sales position. So this was it. So it was a little scary, especially looking back at it, because as I said, the company when we bought it, the revenue they've been doing, they really hadn't been making a profit in many years, and the idea of supporting a family and things like that, it was a little daunting at the time. It's like, okay, how are we going to make this work? Unfortunately, it did work out. So and it really, both from a time and energy standpoint, it's been a full-time thing. One of the nice things about, and I'm excited about moving to Peoria, is that a lot of the things that basically it was just me doing, the marketing, the product development, the sales, logistics, we now have been able to hire other people to work on those as well. So it's not just me. I now have people who are working on it, who are experienced, and they can do it as well. So
and are those people from Peoria that you're hiring?
Yes. So we have about 10 people here. So they were all. We had one person. Well, actually, one person actually moved from Kansas. They're here. They moved to Peoria for this opportunity. So they work in our warehouse. We had one person who had been working remote in Chicago, continued for a while in customer service, but has since left. We got a couple other remote people, but basically everyone else was new and hired here in Peoria.
And how have you found the talent market here?
Really, I mean, comparatively very good. When a year ago when we were looking for our first hire, I wanted a GM, someone who also had an HR background because they were going to be hiring other people, and I wanted them to set up everything because we didn't really have processes in Kansas. And so, did a lot of interviewing and meeting people in person, things like that, and actually kind of came down to like the final 6. And I remember thinking, again, this was about almost exactly a year ago, I think, when I was interviewing the final 6, that I thought, just about any of these would be good. I felt like it wasn't like, it was, I had to settle or anything like that. I felt, and for other roles too, at times, I'll interview someone for a role and kind of think to myself, they're not quite, I think, well, they were in Kansas, they would have been good enough, but I feel like, we've seen better, we have better here. So yeah, it's been very good.
Awesome. So of course, a lot of people looking to get into the business can't do it full time like you were successful in doing. Any last words for them in terms of how do you continue your side hustle until it becomes?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I've talked to some entrepreneurs now too who come to me and they're coming up with ideas for games or products or things like that. And I think, yeah, if you're starting something from scratch in particular, something that doesn't have a history or revenue, a direct path that to sales, I think it makes a lot of sense to do the side hustle. I think also with everything from like Alibaba sourcing products in China to obviously Amazon and other marketplaces, it's probably easier than ever to buy, sell products worldwide, and that you don't have to actually have a physical presence or even necessarily be at a certain time. I mean, as we've been talking here, I'm sure we've sold dozens of games and they're being shipped by Amazon. It's not like I have to be watching a computer or have customer service people here, but a lot of this kind of happen while you're you could set up things at night on weekends, what have you, and then you could keep your kind of day job. And so I think that makes a lot of sense for things like that, where again you're kind of starting from scratch. You don't necessarily have a lot of money to invest to start it up, but so you kind of start that way, and it's a great way to kind of test the waters, see if if your idea is going to fly. I think, like I said, I think it's easier now than ever before. Just with Amazon and the ability to kind of create a storefront there and put up your shingle and start selling stuff. If that's what you want to do.
So Tony, I want to thank you so much for your time for Whiskey Talks and for sharing your insights as well as your story with PopaShot.
Thank you. Thanks for your time, Andrew. Appreciate it.